Believing that an informed electorate is an essential element of a free society, the Pasadena Channel and tonight's sponsors are proud to bring you an opportunity to meet judges and judicial candidates in three types of courts: family district courts, county criminal courts at law, and criminal district courts. The judges and candidates will be given an opportunity to introduce themselves and then will be invited to respond to questions that are both topical and illustrative of their ability to hold the offices they seek. We hope that you will find tonight's activities informative and helpful in the exercise of your sacred right to vote. It is now my pleasure to introduce to you Pasadena Fire Marshal David Brannon, who will chair tonight's proceedings.
Thank you.
Marshal?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm David Brannon, Fire Marshal for the City of Pasadena. I'd like to welcome you to tonight's screening for the candidates for county criminal courts. At this time, I would like to ask Associate Pastor Chuck Snyder with Sagemont Church to lead us in prayer.
Let's pray. Father, we pause and we are praying for these who bear the weight of great responsibility. They put themselves in a position to say, here I am. Father, we pray for them knowing that you've given government as a blessing to people and to our community, and that one of the things that they have to do is bear the sword according to your word. Great responsibility in the decision-making they have. And so, Father, we pray for great wisdom for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. At this time, I'd like to introduce our judicial panel. Starting at my right, Kevin Melton, Senior Plans, Medicare Plan Consultant. Mark Stanley with Ventec, local business owner here in the city of Pasadena. Bruce Lehman, Pasadena City Council, District B. Kirby Cardenas, our City of Pasadena Parks Director. Chuck Snyder, Associate Pastor, Sagemont Church. Jeff Allen, Deputy Fire Marshal, City of Pasadena. Jim Hastings, pastor over Helping Hands, Sagemont Church. Jess Brooks, local business owner here in the city of Pasadena, Brooks Concrete. Vance Mitchell, Pasadena Police Department Records Division. Larry Suniga, Deputy Fire Marshal, City of Pasadena Fire Marshal's Office. I would like to thank all of y'all for coming out tonight. And with that being said, we will start our forum with the first candidate for County Court Criminal Law number 2, candidate Harold Landreau. Sorry. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
My name is Harold Landreau. I am a criminal defense attorney. I went to the University of Houston. I have a degree in political science. I went to the South Texas College of Law. I got my JD. I've been a lawyer for 9 years. I've had more than 350 jury trial cases. I was elected twice to the Harris County Bail Bond Board to represent the interests of the criminal defense attorneys and bonding attorneys of Harris County. And I think I would be a great addition to the court down there.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
These are very serious cases. You want to protect the person that's been injured in these kind of cases. You also want to protect the presumption of innocence of the person that's accused of these injuries, the actions they've done. I would use pretrial motions, as we do now down there, to protect the injured party. No contact orders. There's other issues you might have to work out amongst the parties there, whether they have children or not, to have the trade-off of the children between the two spouses. There's other issues about living arrangements, those kind of things. But you want to make sure that the parties have the least amount of contact as possible, so there's no fear of retaliation against the person who's bringing the case against the other one. These are very serious cases, and they've been in the news a lot lately, and we want to do all we can to try to prevent the violence within the family.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in a greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
What I like to do in my court is to start court earlier and do more trials within that court. I think we could do probably at least 1 or 2 a week at the least. And I'd like to increase the number of trials that we do there. I'd like to hear more cases and spend more time at the court and to move more cases through the system there. There's a lot of times that we don't do trials during a week, and we could change that. If you did more trials and called more cases to trial, the cases themselves would work out. The lawyers would decide which cases really have to go to court, which ones don't, and we would get rid of the backlog there.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Well, the public defender program is a great program down there. It's run by Alex Bunnan. Most of the time, those cases in county criminal court have the public defender come in when there's a mental health issue. We'd like to see the budget increase to where there's a greater use of them in the county criminal courts, but I would continue to use them as I could in those in my court, as well as private attorneys. The defense bar down there is a fine group of people. They know how to represent clients. I would continue to use both sources for defense of indigent defendants. I would try to spread out the appointments, though, more so than what's done now.
Thank you. Our next candidate, Judge John Clinton, County Criminal Court of Law, number 4.
Thank you.
Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Well, my name is John Clinton, and I'm the presiding and current judge in Harris County at County Criminal Law number 4. Well, just a little bit about myself. I'm born and raised here in Pasadena. My dad was a principal out here for 30 years or so. I graduated from Sam Rayburn High School in 1975. I've been married to my wife for 24 years, have 4 beautiful children, and we're guardians of a nephew and niece. I guess I spent half my life here as a member of the First Presbyterian Church, and then switched over when I moved out to Spring to Champion Forest Baptist. I joined the Houston Police Department at the age of 19 and spent 23 years in the robbery division. I have tried more cases than any judge in Harris County. I feel that my experience in the last 4 years and being a judge, apparently I have to stop, so I can't
Okay, going on to the
tell
next
you
question.
anything else.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Well, we'll probably continue doing what we're doing right now. I think all the criminal courts have done quite a bit, and that we take them very seriously. We set high bonds on these folks so we can get them in, so we can talk to them and learn what the issues are to set up MOAPs, which is an emergency protective order. We then look at the case a little bit more in regards to having a no contact order and to be able to monitor these as a condition to bond. And if they break these things, then we'll revoke their bond and put them back in jail.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce into your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
Well, I think right now that with the DA's office and with their cooperation and with the cooperation of some of the police agency and legislation, that we are trying to do something, implement procedures in regards to possession of marijuana and possibly shoplifting cases for first-time offenders. I think that if we implement these programs, it's going to reduce the jail population in our court docket.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Well, again, I think the Public Defender's Office is an awesome program, and that right now they're dealing with our mental health issues. Now, the county criminal courts have the appointments of attorneys a little bit different than most, and that is that we set up guidelines to where they have to be eligible to even participate. Once they fit those guidelines, they're tested. Once they're tested, then they come in front of the review board of all the judges to see if they fit the qualifications to be put on a list. Once this list is generated, it's computer generated, and then every court, what it does is sort of like a lottery, and every time that we need a court-appointed attorney, that they come up and they're selected, and we do this every 3 months and get a new group from this random distribution from that list.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Our next candidate, Judge Margaret Stewart Harris, County Court Criminal Law, number 5. Please state your name and why you feel you'd be a good candidate for this court.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Margaret Harris, and I am currently the judge in County Criminal Court at Law number 5, where I've served you, the citizens, for the last 12 years. Before I was elected judge in Harris County, I also served the citizens, having been hired in 1986 by Johnny Holmes as an assistant district attorney, where I served for 16 years. That gives me 28 years of experience solely in this criminal justice system. I've tried hundreds of jury trials as a judge and as a lawyer as well. I'm fortunate enough to have the support of my peers as well. The Houston Bar Association members have ranked me head and shoulders above my opponent. I've also been endorsed by the Pasadena Bar Association, the Mexican American Bar Association, and several law enforcement groups. I am a native Houstonian. I've chosen to stay in Harris County with my husband and raise our children here, and I will be here forever. I hope to be reelected. Thank you.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Even though this is a big story in the headlines right now, it's been a problem ever since we've had a criminal justice system. Unfortunately, domestic violence has always lurked in the background. We are always mindful of these cases and always concerned about the safety of the victims in those cases. First of all, when I find out that a victim is requesting protection, I will not release an offender on bond unless I make sure that they have been admonished as to a protective order when one's requested. That's an order that stays in effect for 61 days. In addition, we usually also do a no-contact order as a condition of bond that remains in effect the entire time that the case is pending. Additionally, I always require batterers intervention prevention counseling whenever there's a probation in these cases.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
Today's criminal justice system is not the same as the one I joined in the 1980s. Our caseloads are much larger and our cases are much more complex, even in the misdemeanor courts. Because of that, we have to adapt constantly. Just in the past year, I've made changes in my own court to start our docket half an hour earlier, making it a longer docket session, and making myself available from the beginning to all the attorneys as well as the parties in the cases. That way we can not only ease the courthouse congestion at the front door, but also the attorneys as they flow from court to court. We're also having to give longer resets on the more complex cases, like the driving while intoxicated cases that involve blood tests, and that allows for discovery as well. I'm also part of a mental health court pilot program right now, connecting mentally ill people with resources in our community.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
As has been touched on already by some of the speakers, in the misdemeanor courts, we have what's called a term appointment system rather than a case-by-case appointment system. Attorneys are assigned to our court for a length of time, and their names come from a random assignment by a computer program made up from those people who have qualified in various ways to be on that list. The Public Defender's Office does a wonderful job of representing our significantly mental ill indigent defendants as well. And I have to tell you, there just aren't enough of them to handle all the cases that we have with the profoundly mentally ill indigent people in our courts. I do have to say that we have a wonderful defense bar here in Harris County, a wealth of attorneys who are well able to handle all of these cases.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Candidate Ramona Franklin, County Court Criminal Law, number 5. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Hello, my name is Ramona Franklin. I am the Democratic Judicial Candidate for Harris County Court number 5. I am an adjunct at Remington College, and I practice as a criminal defense attorney. And my very first job straight out of law school was at the Harris County Assistant District Attorney's Office. I received my Bachelor's of Arts degree from Florida Agriculture and Mechanical University, and I have my Master's of Science at Lynn University, and I received my Juris Doctorate from Thomas M. Cooley Law School. I know that I am better qualified for this position because I have a diverse background. You see, I was a prosecutor as well as a defense attorney. I think that is extremely important when you're talking about being a representative of a Harris County judge on the bench. I believe it is well suited that someone is able to see both sides. As a result of me being a prosecutor as well as a defense attorney, I've been on both sides. And so when I get on the bench, I'm not going to just have my prosecutorial nature on, but I'll also have the hand of grace as a defense attorney as well. So I've been on both sides, and I think that's really, really well suited for a judge.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Unfortunately, the domestic violence has been around forever. I've had several clients who've been victims as well as those who've been accused. One of the main things that I think we need to engage in our courts is the development of a new misdemeanor court for domestic violence. I also think we need to have no contact orders. A lot of times victims, they don't want the no contact orders, but sometimes as the judge, it is befitting for you to know that sometimes we have to do what's in the best interest of the victim, even though they may not request that. So I think that's important to do that. I also think I need to employ the emergency protective order as well. And again, that protects the victim. I also think the sensibilities of helping the victim that deals with domestic violence, encouraging them to get assistance from the different shelters and different programs that are afforded to them. Because a lot of times as victims, they continue to stay in the same relationship.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
The very first system that I want to basically eradicate is the court appointment system that we have currently. It is not a fair system. It's been told that it's done by computerized, generated, but it's not a fair system. What tends to happen in our courtrooms are the same attorneys continue to practice in the same courtrooms. The problem with that is it shows the impartiality of the courtroom. It also shows the impartiality of the criminal justice system. I believe that we need to take that out of the hands of the judge and allow that to be given to a fair and impartial, neutral third party. So that would be the first thing that I would institute.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons as you see them of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
The public defender's office is awesome. The only thing that I think that would be really nice is if we can give them more funding so that they can go beyond the cases that they're able to practice. There aren't any cons other than, like I said, that I would like for them to be able to get more funding so that we don't necessarily have to have private attorneys. The problem that I see with the court-appointed attorneys that are private is the sense that, again, the judges are the ones that are hand-selecting the attorneys as opposed to the system being done fairly. The attorneys that we have that are practicing as court-appointed attorneys or private attorneys are all very competent, all have to take a test, all have to have the competency to practice. So that's not an issue, but I do think it should be fair in that the same attorney should not be practicing in the same courtrooms, that it should be given across the board.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge Larry Stanley, County Court Criminal Law number 6. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Pardon me. I've got a root canal scheduled tomorrow at 9 o'clock. I think I'd rather be doing that than this. God, please help me not make a fool of myself. I'm the best suited candidate for this position because I've been doing it for 16 years. And before that, I was a prosecutor under the tutelage of Johnny Holmes, and I did that for 14 years. Rose to the level of a chief felony prosecutor and helped put a cop killer 6 feet under. Now, the kind of cases that we handle are DWI, family assault, and drug cases. The best tool that we have in Court 6, it's not my court, it's your court. But I'm just like you. But the best tool we've got is me, because I'm a father. I have 4 kids. I shop at HPD right down at HEB, HPD, that's funny, down the road by Fairmont. And I'm just like you. I went to public school and I got to stop. So there we go. Go ahead.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
What I do in family violence cases is I tell the person that's charged that by law, judges are required to get so many hours, and this is from a conference that I went to on family violence. What good does it do to make judges go to a conference if you don't share that information with the person standing in front of you? So what I do is I start off with telling them what I've learned in this deal is that little boys, do you have a son? Little girls, you have a daughter that grow up watching this kind of stuff. The boys end up being abusers, and the girls end up looking for a boyfriend that's going to beat them up. And then I close with this. I say, you know what? I don't want to get in your personal business, sir, but I'll bet you the experts told me that when you were a little boy, did you happen to watch your mama get beat up? And what would you do if you could go back in time in the body you have right now to that man? Tears well up. I don't care how many tattoos they have on them. I try to connect with them. That's what I try to do in the family violence cases. You've got to take a one-on-one personal approach.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
You know, I hate using the word effectiveness and efficiency when you're dealing with human lives. I mean, the trains ran on time during the 30s in Germany. What I like to do is basically deal with a person and their heart and deal with their life situation that's going on. I was a kid once. I was pretty messed up. I didn't like high school. I got pops. My butt bled. I didn't skip school anymore. But every day I am looking out there for me as a kid. I'm looking at me. I'm looking for me trying to correct what I did wrong and try to give them a leg up. The kind of procedures I do is I counsel people. I take time. I don't care if people are waiting. I take the time to deal with the person. I think jail should be reserved for people we are afraid of and not people we are just mad at. In DWI cases, we were given a grant through the probation department by the Robert Woods Johnson Foundation, and it was published to deal with a program that I have in probation, which deals with cutting out articles and having a DWI notebook. Go ahead.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defender program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I'll get into that in just a second. The Southwest Journal of Criminal Justice, spring 2006, is where the grant was published, and they did a study on the effectiveness of people that get a DWI, and you require them on probation to keep a notebook of articles that relate to DWIs, a daily reminder. As to the indigency situation, long and short, I don't care how you squeeze it, I don't care how you look at it, ladies and gentlemen, down the road, it is my hopeful fervor that we get a public defender's office straight up. I'm an umpire. When I show up in court, I got one field down at the end, one team down at the end of the field. They're doing stretches. They're ready to go. I do not want to have anything to do with setting up this other team. I don't want to sign their pay voucher. I don't want to pick them out. I don't want to be a scout. I don't want to have anything to do with it. For me to be neutral, I ought to be out of it completely. That's what I want. That's what you should get, and that's what I feel. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been such an honor to serve you. I've got my 30 years in.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Candidate Linda Geffen, County Court Criminal Law, number 6. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Hi, my name is Linda Hood Geffen. Currently, I'm a senior assistant attorney at the county attorney's office. There, I handle a variety of different types of general litigation. I'm a mom. I'm a grandmother. I have 2 grandkids. I have an undergraduate degree in psychology and sociology, and like many of the other people here, I was hired by Johnny Holmes right out of law school, and I spent 10 years at the DA's office. I was very excited every day I went to work with the wide variety of cases, of victims, of defendants, and the energy around and the opportunity to do justice to any person, regardless of ethnicity, race, sexual gender orientation. And I have done currently a lot of work with civil injunctions, using them to close down neighborhood nuisances.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Domestic violence has been around as long as there have been people on this earth, I'm afraid to say. The current tools that are in place are adequate. We have no contact orders. We have bonds that can have no contact orders. There are every tool available. The important thing to do is to look at every case. And there are victims, yes. There are defendants, but is that victim actually safe enough to feel that they can speak and say what really happened? Were there children who watched what happened? Every portion of the family needs to be looked at and addressed. It is not a one-on-one situation. There is a perpetrator and there is a victim, and there are other people, other family members that need to be addressed. We have the tools to do it, and those cases should not be rushed through the system, but they need to have individual attention and utilize every tool to keep every person safe during the pendency of the case.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness or efficiency in your court.
One of the things we have an urgent need for are diversion courts for victims of human trafficking. Currently in Harris County, we have other types of diversion courts that have been very effective. We have diversion courts for veterans, which has been a great success. We have sober courts and mental health courts. Prior to currently being involved in general litigation, I spent 6 years writing civil lawsuits to close fronts for human trafficking. And I've been on raids with the police, and I have been this close to victims of human trafficking. And I have, on those raids, seen them arrest some of the defendants, some of the crooks. But more often than not, I have seen them arrest the women, the girls, the victims for prostitution. Every single one of those victims have been threatened, beaten, raped in order to be involved in the commercial sex slave trade. Each of those persons need to be evaluated, screened, and diverted into a different system within our courts, and I intend to do that.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Our present public defender system is great. It was a long time coming, and it should be expanded. In addition to handling mental health defendants, it's a system that's funded by tax dollars, and most of what we have in Harris County in the criminal justice system is funded by the citizens. And the citizens have a right to have strong advocates for every defendant. It doesn't matter if they come from the public defender system or from private attorneys. I will do my best to see that every defendant has someone who is educated, who is articulate, and can advocate for that client, who is familiar with the criminal justice system and will do their best to put on the best representation for every client they handle, regardless of where they work.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Judge Jay Carahan, County Court Criminal Law, number 8.
Thank you. Good
Please.
evening. My name is Jay Carahan, and I'm the presiding judge of County Criminal Court at Law number 8, and I've been there for nearly 12 years. Before becoming a judge, I practiced law on both sides of the docket for 20 years. I started in 1983 my legal career as a prosecutor with the Harris County DA's office, and after that I spent 4 years with the U.S. Attorney's Office as a federal prosecutor. I interned at the Harris County DA's office throughout law school. In 1991, I left government practice to join Cooper Industries as an in-house lawyer. It was then a Fortune 100 company, to advise the company on corporate compliance and due diligence, mergers, and acquisition matters. When Cooper restructured in 1995, I started my own practice in white-collar and business compliance and mediations. In 2008, as a judge, I was one of 5 judges who were assigned pilot DWI courts modeled after drug courts to rehabilitate repeat DWI offenders. I helped design and implement these courts, and I serve on the committee that oversees them. I currently meet and mentor 17 through 19-year-old probationers who need extra attention. Thank you.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools would you have available to protect the injured party?
During the pretrial stage, I will grant motions for emergency protection. I do that every day now when the victim requests it or the prosecutor requests it if the circumstances require. And I also make a condition of bond that the individual not have contact with the spouse or the loved one who is the alleged victim in that offense. In certain cases that require it, I use GPS monitoring to make sure that the defendant stays away from the victim. As far as trial is concerned, I prioritize the domestic violence cases. They get to go to trial over the non-victim cases first before the non-victim cases. And I think the law should be beefed up for cases where somebody abuses a loved one in front of their small children. I think there should be a 3-day minimum in jail for that.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
For the last 2 years, I've instituted a progressive docket control policy in Court 8 to minimize unnecessary settings and non-productive trips to the courthouse by defendants and their attorneys. This has the effect of reducing courthouse traffic. And I believe that we are now in the process of opening up and implementing a project or impact court to hear old trial cases to alleviate those trial cases on our docket.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I believe the current public defender's office is doing a splendid job representing the indigent defendants in Harris County. Now, currently in misdemeanor court, the public defender's office handles only mental health cases and appeals that come out of our courts. And I think they do an excellent job of doing that. I think their office should be expanded. And I agree with Judge Stanley. The selection of lawyers to represent the indigent defendants should not be made by judges. It should be done by an independent body. I look forward to that. But for now, we're stuck with a mixed system of public defenders for those cases I mentioned and the private attorneys. With regard to private attorneys, all of the lawyers that work in county court and are assigned work on a term system. They meet guidelines. They have met the Fair Defense Act guidelines. They do an excellent job of representing the clients in those courts. They need to have more resources, and I'm in favor now of giving them a little more pay to attract and keep good lawyers and talent in that defense bar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Candidate Kelly Johnson, County Court Criminal Law, number 8. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Well, first of all, good evening, everyone. My name is Kelly Johnson, and I'm a prosecutor, a mom, and a citizen just like you. I began my career getting an undergraduate degree from the Texas Christian University, go Horned Frogs. After that, I moved to Washington, D.C., where I served for 2 years in the White House Travel Advance team, where I traveled the world and really got to see civil liberties at its basic. After that, I graduated from South Texas College of Law, where I earned a Juris Doctorate. Then I interned at the Court of Criminal Appeals, which is basically our Supreme Court on the criminal side of Texas. After that, I became a prosecutor, helping to serve the citizens of Harris County. Currently, I'm a chief prosecutor in the District Court 262nd. I just recently completed the spring high school stabbing case. It was a 3-week case where I saw the issues that children are facing in our schools and the problems that we have.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
First of all, I would say that domestic abuse is the #1 most dangerous case that a county criminal court at law judge faces. It is pervasive. It's across our county. It affects our communities and probably everyone that each of us faces. But as a judge, you have to be fair. You have to look at every case individually, and you have to leave the prosecution to the prosecutors. But you have to maintain the rights of the accused. And in doing that, you have to make sure that the bonds are set appropriately, that the citizens are protected, that if there's a society safety concern, that you address that specifically as a judge. That's your role and that's your duty. Another thing you look at, even if the victim is not wanting it, you look at whether or not there's an emergency protective order in place, whether there needs to be no contact orders, and whether or not as a judge there are specific conditions you can place on that bond to help protect that victim and the rest of the family members.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness or efficiency in your court.
One of the issues facing county courts is a humongous docket. Most people are on bond. It crowds the courthouses, and it also differentiates between nonviolent crimes like possession of marijuana, which we see going by the waistline as far as an arrestable offense, possession of prescription drugs, which is very pervasive in a lot of crimes, and then you've got violent crimes. One of the ways of reducing let's move along with the docket is dividing the dockets. I think you can have a nonviolent docket and you can have the violent offender docket. That allows the lawyers and the judges to address the concerns that are pervasive under most crimes, the mental health, the addiction concerns, and some of the things where those individuals can be handled better by pretrial bonds and to be separate from the individuals that are charged with the more nonviolent crimes.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
I think we have an excellent defense bar in Harris County. I work with them every single day in my court as a chief prosecutor. I do think they're excellent. But as citizens, when you are accused of a crime or someone that you love is accused of a crime, you want to know that if they can't afford adequate and fair representation, that they're going to get it. And as a judge, as we've heard before here, I don't think it's my role to choose your lawyer. And I think it is imperative as a judge, and that is one thing that I want to do in giving a fresh face to this judicial bench, is by addressing the fact that it needs to be in probable cause court when the person first learns that they've been charged with an offense. That judge, that neutral magistrate who doesn't have a dog in the fight, he or she is the one that would appoint that attorney. That's what you deserve, and that's what's fair, and that's what needs to happen before they get there. I think the public defender's office is amazing, but it's not developed enough now to handle the large dockets and misdemeanor, and right now it does mental health. And let's focus on taking out the
Thank you.
choices. Thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
Okay.
Our next candidate is candidate Jason Long, County Court Criminal Law, number 13. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. My name is Jason Lung, and I'm the Democratic candidate for Criminal Court 13. I'm a longtime Houstonian. I come from a family of 2 public servants. My father, after putting himself through college, worked for the city of Houston for 20 years as an accountant. My mother still works today as over 20 years as a civilian employee with the Houston Police Department. I want to serve our county. I feel I'm the most qualified candidate because I'm the only candidate that's had experience as both a law clerk to a federal judge, a prosecutor with the Harris County District Attorney's Office, and an active defense practice. I've seen criminal cases from every side that there is to see it from. I would bring balance and fairness to the court, and that's why I want to be your judge for Court 13.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
When I was a prosecutor, I handled the protective order docket for the DA's office. One of 2 or 3 handled this. This meant we helped people who are seeking protective orders where there was a threat of future violence against them. I've seen the kind of tools judges have available to them. I would use every single one of those tools to make sure that victims are protected. We shouldn't treat all these cases the same, however, and every case needs to be looked at the individual facts. Some cases will require protective orders. Some will require even more protective measures. Some will require less. It's important that judges listen to the facts and use all of those at their disposals. Be creative in the types of counseling that are required when a person does plead guilty to committing such an offense.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court if elected that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and/or efficiency in your court.
I think everyone sees this in our courthouses, that the biggest problem facing our courts is the large dockets and the length of time it takes to resolve a case. That's the real cost of our criminal justice system, that it could take a year, year and a half, sometimes longer before a case can finally get to trial. That hurts the person accused of a crime, it hurts our law enforcement officers, it hurts the victims. I would move to a more flexible docketing schedule that would allow, rather than everyone coming in at one time in the morning, as we currently do, stagger the dockets out so the courts aren't as long. The court lines, even to get into the courthouses, aren't as long. Secondly, I would move to a situation which we wouldn't require a defendant to go to court every single month simply to get the cases reset. We need to make our system more efficient so the lawyers can work out the cases and people aren't missing work, victims aren't missing work, missing school, and our law enforcement officers aren't simply coming to court only to have their cases reset.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
What the people of Pasadena and the people of Harris County want to know is that the courts are being run fairly, that judges aren't picking attorneys to represent lawyers or defendants just because those are supporters of themselves. In that way, I 100% favor a system in which that decision is not made by the judge. We can imagine the outcry we'd have if judges were picking the prosecutors who are prosecuting cases. That's the same with defense lawyers. We're moving slowly to improving the system by having public defenders and private attorneys available for cases. That's critically important because basically it's a checks and balance to make sure that the system is working honestly and fairly. Public defenders do a great job, especially dealing with cases dealing with mental health caseloads, and our private attorneys must continue to be chosen fairly and honestly so that all citizens know the courts are treating people fairly.
Thank you. Judge Jean Spalding Hughes, County Clerk, Criminal Law, number 14. Sorry about the pronunciation.
Hi, I'm Jean Spradling Hughes, and I've been judge of Harris County Criminal Court at Law for 15 years. I'm a graduate of South Texas College of Law and the University of Texas at Dallas, and I'm entering my 43rd year working in the criminal justice system. I've worked in law enforcement, courts, and corrections, both as a prosecutor, paralegal for a criminal defense lawyer. That 43 years' experience is so beneficial on a daily basis in dealing with the cases and the individuals that I see. I've been a leader in the local judiciary as well as the statewide judiciary. I certainly serve as chair of criminal justice legislation for the statewide judiciary, chair-elect of the Texas Association of County Court at Law Judges, and served 5 years as the presiding judge of the 15 county criminal courts at law.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Whenever there is a request and evidence to support a protective order, that will be granted. I will also always consider a no-contact order in which I can put additional provisions on bond conditions of anyone released from jail. You have to look at special conditions. Is there a need for drug and alcohol testing? Should they be placed into counseling? If there are violations of any of those orders, then the court needs to be notified. I'm quickly going to have a hearing and make a decision. Does the person need to be remanded back to jail? Do there need to be additional conditions made? If they enter into a probation plea, deferred adjudication, or pretrial intervention, then look at the conditions. Do they need parenting counseling? Do they need battered intervention programs? Do they need drug and alcohol counseling? You've got to look at each case individually.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce in your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness and or efficiency in your court.
One of our biggest issues in Harris County are defendants who are in the criminal justice system who suffer from mental health disorders. In 2007, I had a pilot project court which became the blueprint for the current public defender's office, which I've worked in obtaining. And we had a specialized attorney who dealt in mental health issues. We identified a group of defendants that received fast tracking through the criminal justice system as well as special care at the end. I'm currently one of 3 project pilot courts for a new mental health jail diversion program that will provide even greater resources for those defendants when they are released. I also served on a national panel that set the best practices for the nationwide system on handling defendants who suffer from mental health who are in the criminal justice system as well as the mental health system.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
We have a fabulous public defender's office, which I helped in obtaining several years ago. They are wonderful in handling our mental health cases, and they need more attorneys to do that. That is all they are established to do, is handle mental health cases. Our plan that we have currently with the County Criminal Court at Law Judges, lawyers have to be certified. They have to pass a test. Our plan is approved by the 15 judges. It has to be approved by the regional presiding judge, and it is subject to audit and review by the Texas Indigent Defense Commission in Austin. I think we have a good plan. There can always be improvements. We are studying those at this time, and we'll look forward to see what happens in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Candidate Raul Rodriguez, County Court Criminal Law, number 15. Please state your name and why you feel you're a good candidate for this court.
Hi, my name is Raul Rodriguez. I am a Democratic candidate for County Criminal Court at Law number 15. I graduated from the University of Houston with a degree in business administration, and I worked for 6 years after that in the business world before I decided to pursue a law degree. Graduated from South Texas College of Law, and I received my degree in jurisprudence, which then I became a licensed attorney in 1992. I've been practicing criminal law primarily for the past 22 years. I've tried many cases, everything from a speeding ticket all the way to a capital murder and everything in between. I'm very well experienced in handling criminal cases. In 2005, City of Houston Mayor Bill White appointed me as an associate judge to the City of Houston, which I currently do. I sit as an assistant judge with the City of Houston.
Domestic violence is currently very much in the news. If elected, how would you handle such cases in your court, and what tools do you have available to protect the injured party?
Domestic violence is a very serious issue in Harris County, in all counties, in fact, all over the nation. It runs the gamut regardless of race and religion, gender. It's a very serious issue. What I would do as a judge is I would look at each individual case on a case-by-case basis. I would give those individuals that are accused of domestic violence the opportunity to have a fair and impartial hearing before my court before I decide if any conditions should be assessed. As far as the victims, when appropriate, they should be given protective orders, orders that will ensure that they are protected against the person that's being accused of domestic violence. Those are the types of conditions that will protect not only the victims, but society. When appropriate, I will also give bond conditions which will allow a defendant to have conditions of bond so that they can be so that the victim can be protected against the perpetrator.
Please state a procedure or policy that you have or plan to introduce into your court, if elected, that you feel has or will result in greater effectiveness or efficiency in your court.
Most of the individuals that are charged with criminal offenses in County Criminal Court at number 15 are individuals that are charged with small misdemeanor offenses such as marijuana, driving while license suspended, criminal trespass, and a lot of those individuals land in jail and can't afford to bond out. What I would do is I would give the opportunity for those individuals that are incarcerated an opportunity to be released on a pretrial bond, on a personal bond. Many of these individuals are individuals that we all know of. They have jobs, they have families, and there's no need for those individuals to be incarcerated or waiting for their hearings or for their trials. When appropriate and when they qualify, those individuals can be released from jail. They can be released on a personal bond, enabling them to have the opportunity to go back to their families, to their jobs, and so they can come back to court to allow them the opportunity to handle their cases.
Please give your opinion of the pros and cons, as you see them, of the present public defendant program versus the appointment of private attorneys to represent the indigent.
Harris County has a great public defenders program. It's only been in existence for several years, and most of the people that work in that department for the public defender's office, they handle more serious offenses. In misdemeanor court, in the county criminal courts at law, there's only one individual that's from the public defender's office, and they mainly handle a mental health caseload. There's more need for public defenders to be able to come to Harris County criminal courts at law to defend individuals that are charged with misdemeanor offenses. I will try to seek the opportunity to have more individuals, more lawyers from the public defender's office come so that they can handle persons that are charged with criminal offenses in criminal court, in county criminal courts at law. The present system allows individual attorneys and private attorneys to represent those individuals, and currently we have a very good system of appointing private attorneys to represent indigent persons that are charged with misdemeanor offenses.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for your time.
This now concludes our judicial screening review panel. I would like to thank all of the panel members, all of the candidates for coming out tonight, and the sponsors that helped put this on to make it a successful event. Thank y'all, and be careful going home.